Good evening and welcome to our budget hearing this evening. We have the board of directors, the superintendent, and we are first, before we get started this evening, I'm going to ask the translators who are here this evening to come forward, interpreters, come forward, introduce themselves in the language that they'll be interpreting, and then tell people where they're going to be standing. Please come forward.
Buenas tardes, me llamo Argel Jiménez, voy a ser el intérprete. Si es que necesitan interpretación, voy a estar parado aquí a mi mano derecha, a su mano izquierda. Gracias.
Здравствуйте, меня зовут Кристина, я русская переводчица. Если вы нуждаетесь в русском переводе, то я буду находиться вот там в углу.
我姓马，我是中文翻译。假如你有需要的，我在后面，你可以叫我幫你。我姓馬，我做中文翻譯。如果你需要，我會喺後邊等你。
Good evening, my name is Đạo Đón. I'm Vietnamese translator for tonight. Xin chào, tôi nói tiếng Việt. Nếu cần sự giúp đỡ về tiếng Việt, đứng ở phía bên phải. Cảm ơn. Thank you.
Thank you. I also want to note that we do have materials that have been translated that are over on the table with Ms. Hewson that are the superintendent's budget message. So if anybody would like those, we do have those available. So before we get started this evening, we're going to have a short just presentation of the superintendent's budget, and I believe Ryan Dutcher is. Oh, okay.
Good evening. My name is Ryan Dutcher. I'm the interim budget director, and with me tonight I have Molly Bradley as well. And we're just going to give you a really quick overview on the budget, just give you some very, very basic facts. We don't want to take up a lot of time, and then mainly leave time for all of you to make sure and get your feedback. So we're going to jump into this. This is the same version that was given to the board on April 24th. And really, so our funding at Portland Public Schools, we have a variety of different funds. That's how we manage all of our resources. Most of these discussions, when we talk about funding and budget, we talk about our general fund. And our general fund is where we have the most amount of discretion. And as you can see from the page 2, it's our largest fund. So it's about $650 million, just to give you some context. Generally speaking, we had some challenges this year with the budget. We had expenses escalating faster than what our resources were, so we had to make some very difficult changes to make all of this work. And in a very high level, most of our increases on spending were increases in our costs for our employees, so for wages, benefits, insurance, that type of thing. Really what we did to balance the budget, because we had, like any government agency, we have to have a balanced budget. We reduced our budget reserve to a level that's less than optimal, so it's less than we would like to see. And we also, you probably read about some of this in the press, we made some very difficult reductions in our central office. So those are those central departments at the, on Dixon Street. So HR, finance, those central departments, we made some reductions there. So that's how we balanced our budget. Just to give you, I won't spend a whole lot of time on the numbers here, but to give you some ideas on how this has changed year over year, I'll focus really on our resources here. So in the current year, so this is the 17-18 budget, we have about $617 million. We expect that's going to increase to about $650 million next year. So that's a pretty good increase. Still not sufficient. State of Oregon, no surprise, doesn't fund K-12 at sufficient levels, but it is increasing over time. Okay, and then this just gives you an idea from a spending point of view. We've broken this up into two very broad categories, and Molly will go into a couple different levels of detail. Really, we're separating out school site, so those are all the teachers in the classrooms, all the spending that's focused on the classrooms, and just for context, that's about $310 million in this next year's budget. And then our central office, these are a lot of our finance HR. It also includes things like special education, ESL, transportation, spending that's really targeted our schools. It also includes those sources as well, and that's about $316 million. And then the reserve I mentioned before, at 23.8 for our budget year, we'd like to see that another $6 to $10 million higher. but that's about all we could afford in this budget. Okay? And then what you'll be seeing, there's a lot of detail beneath this, but largely speaking, and you can read this also in the Superintendent's Priorities, investments in our schools. That was where we started. We started there chronologically, and we also started there from a priority point of view, so we really put a lot of dollars into our schools. It's been our trend over the past decade, past 10 years. Equity 2.0, and the superintendent can give a lot more details in terms of what that really means. And then really planning for the future. And we have one page here that talks about some of the financial movements we see coming up on the horizon. And this is a tough year, and we and all the other districts across the state think that the next couple years will be difficult as well. So it behooves us to make sure that we're doing everything we can to prepare for that. Okay, I'll turn over to Molly then.
Hi, thanks for joining us this evening. So Ryan talked about the budget in a high level, and we want to go down in a little bit more detail. Part of that is our school site budgets. So we talked about we're spending approximately a little bit over $310 million. A majority of that is in the wages and in the benefits that come along with it. And then there's a small amount, about $5 million, that's spent for school supplies or the internal, the small expenses that a school may have. Oh, sorry. Can you be mine? We did include a leadership organization chart because there has been quite a few changes of how the school is being, how the central office is being structured. We're practically done with it, but we just wanted to point this out to people in case they were curious about how it looked before and now how it looks today. Right. So one of the pieces, Ryan put up the central office numbers, is we want to let people know that that central office number is a combination of two different types of spend. There's student services support spend in that, which we call centrally administered school resources, which is like the special education, your ESL, and stuff like utility bills, facilities management, et cetera, that really go directly to support the children. And of that central office, 58% of those spend goes to those kind of activities. And then the remaining is for your overhead resources like IT, finance, the people who manage the curriculum, et cetera. So here's overall the spend that we have by the different teams. Broken out, you can see the CASR versus the central office pieces. You see some teams have people in both categories, and some are just considered all central. Just to be clear, this is a high-level cut. There's still dollars in that central that could be said goes to the students, but we wanted to be very conservative in showing you guys these numbers to how we can divide them up. And then the next thing Ryan alluded to about coming up is that we are part of this PERS. Our employees are part of that program. And we are currently in 19 and 19. You can see the percentages are fairly small, and then they jump pretty large. That's a piece that we have headwinds in for the future. So as we're looking at making spending decisions today, we have to think about the long term, about that we have to cover those costs in the future fiscal years. And then, keep going. Then next is our budgeted reserve. So part of the mandates that we have is that we can't spend every dollar that we get in. We need to leave part of it aside for any kind of emergencies or, again, for future things that we know we're coming up against headwinds. So we have a mandate to keep so much in our back pocket to ensure that, to help stabilize needs in the future. And then this budget doesn't cover everything that we want. There are proposed investments that people have come forward with. We're talking about how we want to include them. And as we all know, a budget is what we know best today. And so we just want to make sure that we give ourselves enough room to cover what we have to. And if there's additional funds, we can also do these kind of initiatives. And then, as I just said, a budget is imperfect, and so we do have known risks to the budget that we're still trying to figure out. One of them is around the middle school transition costs, of transportation and final build-outs of locations determined, along with our actual salaries for newly hired teachers. So we have, I think it's around like 400 teachers that we're looking to hire, so we have some assumptions built in, so if they come in considerably higher, we'll have that as an impact to meeting our budget. And then our health and welfare, which is our insurance, about what that's going to be for the next years. And then, just so you guys know, we want to give you comfort in that, we put these budgets together. They're a living document. We know where we're at today, but we're always looking at ways to improve our spend and how we can make every dollar even more beneficial to the community that we serve.
So a little bit into the future, typically we look at these in 12-month pieces, but we wanted to make sure we know we've got some spending pressures on the horizon. And so we looked at 2019 and 2020. State of Oregon funds K-12 education on the biennium, so on a 2-year cycle. And we believe that the new biennium will be higher funding levels from the state of Oregon. Still not sufficient, but we do expect some kind of increase. From PPS's point of view, we expect enrollment will be largely flat, and it has been up slightly to flat over the past couple of years, and we expect that trend will continue. So what that means is more dollars spread across about the same number of students. And then we also know we have financial pressures. So Molly mentioned our PERS costs, and that's something that we have limited ability to manage. That's managed at the state level. Our health and welfare costs will increase. You see that across the economy, and we're no different. And then the board has a target that they've adopted to bring the reserves up to 5% by 2021. And so that'll take, we'll have to set dollars aside to meet that target. So those are just some pressures we see coming up. If we're to, and I won't bore you with all the numbers here, but if we're to put what we think our best estimate on a revenue forecast together with the spending forecast, we definitely see some belt tightening in the future. So that, as board members, district administrators, this is the eye we have towards the future, is really being responsible for our resources today, because it wouldn't be good for us to assume that tomorrow is going to bring plenty of resources and no pressure. And then just to give you an idea on the timeline, budget process takes a fair number of months. The next big milestone is for the board to approve the budget that's been adopted, or excuse me, that's been proposed by the superintendent, and then we will plan to adopt that same budget on 6/26, and then it goes live. Our fiscal year starts on July 1st, so we'll need to have it wrapped up by then. Okay, so with that, I'll turn it back over to the board chair.
Thank you very much. So before we get started, this is designed to be a listening session for an opportunity for the community to share their concerns, their perspectives with the board and the superintendent. Just some background on our process going forward. So next Tuesday, we have a board meeting in which the budget will be on the agenda again, and then we have 2 board meetings in June. We have one meeting on the 12th and one meeting on the 26th, and on the 12th, we'll be formally approving the budget, and then on the 26th, there's a second step, which is an adoption. And we have a budget that's been proposed, and this afternoon, we had a budget work session with the board discussing potential modifications or additions or so changes to the budget, and I think there were some areas that were identified by board members working with the superintendent that we're going to have a further discussion with on next Tuesday at the board meeting, and this meeting is also designed for us to hear from the community about your thoughts on the budget. So we'll be taking our conversation that we had today, plus the comments and concerns and suggestions from this meeting into our next board meeting next Tuesday. So with that, I'm going to ask Ms. Hewson, are you going to call up 2 at the same time? Yes. And this is a little bit different from our board meetings. We don't have the lights. What we'd ask is for people to keep your comments to 3 or 4 minutes. So it won't be it's same and hard fast, but we do have a fairly long list of people who've asked to speak. So we'd ask for people to keep it short, and that way everybody will have a chance to speak before it gets too late. So with that, Other, except for Ms. Houston told me that we had said that we weren't going to have lights. I guess that was already indicated to people that we weren't going to use lights. But keep your 3-minute sort of timer going. So with that, Ms. Houston, please call the first two individuals forward, and I'd ask that people to start with your name and spell your last name for the record. Thank you.
Okay. Barry Williams and Bailey Harding.
My name is Bailey Harding. My last name is Harding. And I just wrote a statement to the board regarding RJ. So I'm currently a senior at Madison High School, which is one of 4 or 5 schools in the district that have a restorative justice coordinator at their location. I have learned that having RJ be a part of our school environment is very important. Nyanga Uka is our coordinator and our ally. He supports us and stands behind us in day-to-day life. Having a coordinator at our school brings a comfortability to an environment of discomfort. RJ is that tool for some students that can mean the difference between education or exclusion, freedom or incarceration. Restorative justice is about growing strong, trustworthy relationships. RJ is a way of life. It's about respecting, acknowledging, understanding, and validating one another and our experiences as human race. By doing this, we develop a basic understanding of ourselves, and I also believe that having a representation of a person of color in this kind of position is imperative to the success and confidence of our fellow students. I can sit here today and tell you that my personal experience with RJ has been nothing short of saving my life. At the beginning of the year, I went through a traumatic experience that caused me to be in and out of the hospital. I began starting my days off checking in with Nyanga and talking about what I could do to help myself and get through each day. I believe this is what helped me stay on track and keep me motivated to graduate. He also helped me reintegrate to the school as he has done for so many other people. And also no one in our school serves this function like he does. A new report done by the Oregon Council on Civil Rights shows that Oregon incarcerates young people at a higher rate than almost any other state. We need to realize that RJ can stop bad behaviors in its tracks and turn it around into something positive, which will give all skateholders tools to handle situations, actions, and repercussions in a healthy way. If RJ is saved and expanded, I think we can see a drastic change in stats of youth incarceration and/or higher school dropout rates by giving an alternative to suspension or expulsion. Restorative justice can help break the school-to-prison pipeline, which means higher student attendance and graduation rates. As you crunch your numbers for our school budget, I ask you not to put a price on students' well-being and stability. It is painful to me to have to be here voicing equity concerns for future generations, as I won't be at Madison next year. I am worried about our underclassmen of color and our student body as a whole. Taking away our partnership with Resolutions Northwest and our RJ coordinator would be a regression and backtracking in all of our equity work at Madison. We are not done learning from our RJ coordinator, and there is more to do that requires a commitment from our board to the expansion of restorative justice and not cutting our partnership with a company that is working so well for our building and others. On behalf of all of the students, we feel you're silencing us and telling us you don't care, and I'm here to let our voices be heard loud and clear. We all have been through such insane trials and tribulations as a community, and we stand here before you stronger than ever, and we deserve to have our voices heard. Restorative justice matters, we matter. And finally, I wanted to leave you with a quote from the superintendent at the last Friday Forum meeting we attended. He said, "We need to critically examine our system. We need to do what works for students, student engagement, positive behavior intentions, and adapt a multi-tiered system of support and creating safe environments." I believe that all the evidence that we have for you today validates this quote, and we need to renew contracts with Resolutions Northwest. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Barry Williams. Last week at the board meeting, I shared with you about what I loved about my school and what I was worried will change next year. I have heard no response to my testimony, so I am here to speak again. If MLK School had larger classes next year, I imagine my class will be overwhelming. With every student from one grade in one class. We will have all the personalities of the students together. When we're all together, some students may act up in class. It would be better for us to be in two groups. If there are lots of kids in a class, students will not have their own space to think. My teacher might need to stop the learning to settle things, and this will cut into our education. Currently in our class, there are table groups. We work together to encourage one another and help each other. If we have to add more students, we will have to add more tables, and there will be no space for Group C. I want our school to grow responsibly. The only way to do that is to begin a boundary review and set a timeline for action so that more kids will start coming to MLK school and have the resources our school needs to keep the dream alive. Thank you.
Next, we have Beth Cavanaugh and Shamika Owens.
Hello, I'm Beth Cavanaugh, C-A-V-A-N-A-U-G-H. Yesterday, I, along with 18 other PPS parents, submitted a formal complaint with the district regarding single-strand neighborhood K-5 programs at schools serving high percentages of historically underserved students. As a DBRAC member in 2016, I received a presentation from PPS staff outlining the challenges of single-strand neighborhood programs co-located with DLI. These programs make up the vast majority of our single-strand neighborhood schools, most of which are Title I and serving more than 50% historically underserved students with higher concentrations of poverty and special education needs than in their co-located DLI programs. Some of these challenges include all students who are not native speakers of the partner DLI language entering after kindergarten must go into the single neighborhood strand. Special education students with a language disability, for example, autism spectrum disorder or dyslexia, often drop out of DLI and are concentrated in the neighborhood strand. High rates of mobility on the neighborhood side can cause unpredictable class sizes, which are often very large or too small. Teachers and students in the single strand are isolated, without partner class for grade level mentor teachers and planning, or options to split high-need students to different sections. These issues are problematic enough on their own, but the fact is that the majority of the students isolated in these single strands in PPS are historically underserved students. This is a matter of equitable educational opportunity and racial equity. PPS's racial equity policy states that to achieve educational equity, PPS will provide additional and differentiated resources to support the success of all students, including students of color. PPS needs to permanently adjust the staffing ratio to guarantee a minimum of 2 neighborhood strands in schools serving high percentages of kids of color, which requires additional resources specified in the racial equity policy. Going forward, PPS needs to commit the necessary district-wide boundary review and focus option review required to increase enrollment in the future, and avoid citing temporary programs in single-strand schools until that happens. PPS has identified this problem, as shown in the presentations to DBRAC, Teaching and Learning Board Committee in October of 2016. Parents have been communicating with PPS staff and the school board about their experiences in these situations for at least that long. DBRAC has written recommendations expressing these concerns. At the Finance Audit and Operations Committee meeting on April 17th of this year, the PPS staff presentation listed single strands as item number 1 on the list of what still needs to be improved about the new staffing ratio. And yet, single strands have still not been addressed and appropriately staffed. Teacher and staff transitions in the beginning of the school year can be traumatic for students, especially in vulnerable populations. Therefore, additional FTE should be assigned to single neighborhood strands immediately where space is available to offer the maximum time for administrators to identify high-quality teachers and support community stability. Waiting until October is too late. Thank you.
Good evening. First, I wanted to welcome you all to our home, because many of us call this home. So welcome. And for those of you who know how we do it at our house, this is testimony, right? So we're going to open it right. First, giving honor to God, to Yahweh, who is the center of my life and why I do everything that I do. Thank you for this opportunity to share. And actually, I'm sharing with everybody, so I'm going to stand this way, if that's all right. On April 13th, at the 50th anniversary celebration of the student-led effort to rename this school Dr. Martin Luther King Elementary, then Highland School. Those who are aware of the Vanport chapter of Black Portland's history will understand why the neighborhood was formerly known as Highland. During our celebration in honor of this legendary hero and world leader, I was formally introduced to Mr. Guadalupe Guerrero, at which point he looked me in my eye, shook my hand, and thanked me for my leadership, to which I replied, God in me. Leadership is no more than offering dedicated support to a dynamic team. He did not respond. Thus, I was unsure of whether or not he heard me, or perhaps my response was too deep, too raw, or too real. Either way, I ask you now, Mr. Superintendent, Mr. Chief Equity Officer, each of you, members of our board, why do you lead? Is it to exercise power over others? Is it to maintain a sense of control? Is it because you want to make a name for yourself? Is it to further protect and adhere to the status quo? Or is it because you see the needs around you and you are committed to do what's right? Because if it's the latter, what is being done here tonight is exactly the opposite. Dr. Martin Luther King School community has not only asked, but invited you multiple times. We have begged you to come and listen to us as a community, that you might have the opportunity to hear our hearts. Over the course of the 2017-18 school year, we have patiently waited through all of the pump fakes and false starts. And now, you have come into our very living room to neither listen nor to hear us, but to disseminate information about the decisions you have already made that directly affect us, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. community, as well as the other communities throughout the district. I believe there has been enough testimony given to guide in the process of making the right decision or doing the right thing. I'm not going to waste your time. Properly resized boundaries and releasing of FTE, our dream is not a hope, nor is it a prayer, but a commitment to what we will achieve. The value of our humanity and your ability to be humane are two things which we deeply and strongly believe. To continue to inflict harm on the most hurt communities is abysmal. Most would agree. Though here we stand, at the hand of PPS, a school that not only historically but is currently maliciously, systematically, unapologetically being victimized, as a school as well as a collective community. In this moment, we will be heard. No longer do we care whether or not you wish to listen. We will continue to stay true to our Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. School community, common unity vision. We will continue to pull together and build towards Dr. Martin Luther King's dream. Not just here, but throughout all of PPS, because we fully recognize that we cannot survive, let alone thrive in a vacuum. And positional leadership means nothing without a team. Our vision, we will stand and we will build upon the existing community. And I don't want to read this just for MLK, because this is all of us. We can choose to do this. We can build upon the existing community by reinforcing old and creating new bridges of common unity. We can clearly redefine the us and we, get rid of us and them, as we holistically invite the voice of the entire community, as we sincerely listen and allow each other's words to be heard. We can create the type of community that inspires us all to take part in all PPS programming and decision making. And I would like to extend an extra welcome to our security, because out of all the meetings that I've been to, I have yet to see security standing behind the board. I wonder if that anomaly has a purpose.
Our next speakers are Zeta Hatfield and Grace Groom.
Hi, I'm Zeta Hatfield, Hatfield. As a senior at Madison High School, I have been able to point out disparities and inequities. Like our superintendent said at a Friday forum, restorative justice is important because it promotes safety in schools and it lets us recognize where harm has been done. I feel it is a tremendous harm to take away RJ from us, especially after we've continuously expressed our love for it. With restorative justice behind me, I've developed a desire to be the change I wish to see. RJ has helped me immensely grow as a person, helping me recognize my own weaknesses and issues that were holding me back from becoming the leader I was meant to be. It's helped me understand that there is power in altruism, not individualism. These practices have helped me step into others' shoes and be empathetic. Empathy is the ability to share and understand others' feelings, something that we as students feel we lack from our elders, the people creating and reshaping our school systems. It is our goal to give respect to those we work with, and we ask for it in return. It is students like us who have the power and desire to recognize wrongdoings among our peers, address it, and give them the tools to squash conflicts with peace and integrity. Having an RJ coordinator in the building gives us someone to look up to and faith that someone believes in us. RJ has made an incredible dent in the ruckus of our high school, but the demolition is far from done. It has brought us together to get closer as classmates, helped us find our individual voices, and helped us to teach others and help others' voices be heard. It has created a passion inside us that makes us fight without hesitation for what we've worked so hard on these last few years and the importance of fighting for our futures. It is no question that we need restorative justice in schools. That is why we have banded together as a student union by ourselves for our sakes. As I stand before you today, I ask that we work to restore the relationships between staff and students. I ask that you hear our voices and realize what an extraordinary tool restorative justice is in our school systems. Students are rarely invited to the decision-making, only informed after the damage has been done. As my classmates and I prepare to move on to the next chapters in our lives, we ask that these practices are available to the class of 2019, 2020, 21, and everyone who follows foot. With budget cuts in mind, please understand that restorative justice is crucial to our success, crucial to our safety, and crucial to our confidence as we grow from timid young people to the next leaders of this school system, this city, and this nation. With hundreds of students who want to keep and expand restorative justice, I ask that you grant us the peace of having RJ in schools. We've brought with us some things we'd like to share. We have a student petition, a letter signed by the majority of our staff, and a survey of a collection of about 300 students. Please take a look at these pieces of writing as they support all the information we've put before you. Also, I'd like to invite everybody to our potluck tomorrow at Madison High School from 5 to 6:30 p.m. Here we are going to be celebrating a restorative justice, and it's also a really good visual to see how my classmates, my community gets together for our own free will to save and expand restorative justice. Thank you.
My name is Grace Groom, Groom. Thank you for accepting the invitation to come and be here tonight for this board listening session. I hope that you will also accept the invitation that staff have made and the PTA has made multiple times to come and learn more about our school and how you can be an ally for Martin Luther King. Student-centered, equity-focused, two phrases I'm hearing an awful lot and not seeing a lot of action on. If we allow a co-located program to be cited in a school that has K-5 single strand, that harms children, some of the most vulnerable children we have in our school district. It is not student-centered, it is certainly not equity-focused. I really strongly encourage you to look hard at the budget and how in the heck we have landed with a staffing formula that has still allowed single-strand programs at primarily at schools that serve large majorities of historically underserved students. That does not put equity first. Fix that. In the meantime, fix the staffing before October, before we lose a chance at getting teachers who really, really want to serve this community. And bring more staff to MLK. Our students deserve it. Thank you.
Next, we have Amy Higgs and Brian Conley.
Hi, I'm Amy Higgs, Higgs, and I'm the Executive Director of the EcoSchool Network. The EcoSchool Network trains and supports parents who lead sustainability efforts in 40 PPS schools and other districts. The success of these projects has been facilitated by Nancy Bond, the PPS Resource Conservation Coordinator. Nancy's retiring soon, and the district has proposed to eliminate this position. I'm also a taxpayer and mom of 2 kids in PPS schools, including Da Vinci, a school that cannot accommodate access students, by the way. I'm here to talk about the Resource Conservation Coordinator position, which focuses on conserving resources, environmental and financial. As far as I understand, this is the only staff position in the district of 6,000 employees that focuses specifically on conservation or sustainability. I wanted to talk about the math behind this position. At first glance, cutting the position appears to save the district between $50,000 and $100,000, assuming that a new coordinator could be hired for that much, including benefits. That cost to PPS is on one side of the equation, but let's look at the math on the other side of the equation. What kind of money does this job save the district each year? I'm going to read a list of savings to the district that the person in this position has spearheaded, and I apologize for not having all the data here. This position has installed dual flush toilets, which saves the district $130,000 every year. That would cover her position alone, that one act. She has acquired or managed sewer and stormwater projects at 40 schools, which saves $80,000 a year for the district. She's acquired grant money and rebates for the district, saving $2 million. Every month, she reviews every school's utility bills for errors, which saves almost $1 million a year. She has shortened the sleep cycle and changed power settings on computers throughout the district, saving $200,000 a year. Other energy conservation efforts through the district that she has spearheaded save about $1 million a year. And there are some numbers I wasn't able to find. Money saved through transportation improvements like propane-powered school buses, employee commuting program, water conservation efforts like low-flow faucets, drought-resistant plants, waste management. She actually manages the largest garbage contract in the metro region and coordinates a very successful recycling and composting program in the district. She's acquired community donations for depaving, tree planting, nature play areas, vegetable gardens, and native plants at 60 PPS schools. This position also coordinates in-kind donations and harnesses the work of hundreds of parents, students, teachers, local businesses, public agencies, and nonprofits that all want to advance sustainability, including an AmeriCorps member who serves about 10,000 students over the past 10 years or so. These community partners need a district representative to help navigate district policies and procedures. Their volunteer time is a gift to the district, and the economic value of all those contributions is in the millions. So there are also indirect economic impacts. Let's not forget of the impact of this job on the earth and on our children and on our community. The children educated, the wildlife protected, the veggies grown and tasted, the waste diverted, the fossil fuels never removed from the earth, and the skills learned. These things have enormous economic value too. So what is the total amount of money saved by this position? I don't have the exact figures, but it's clear that this budget cut doesn't add up. This is part of PPS that has been going really well. Nancy put PPS on the map as a national leader for sustainable schools. She has been invaluable for PR for the district, helping the district earn media coverage for happy reasons, like school gardens and being the first certified LEED Platinum building school in the country. Nancy has built and nurtured hundreds of community relations across sectors and can train her replacement to do the same. If you choose to proceed with this cut that doesn't seem to make any sense, we really would appreciate an explanation. I strongly advise you to preserve 20 years of progress and institutional memory, and to prioritize sustainability by continuing to fund this position. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Brian Conley, B-R-I-A-N-C-O-N-L-E-Y. We have 17 school days yet left in the year, and yet 326 Portland Public School students have no school. We have 32 business days left in the fiscal year, and we have no budget. The good news is we still have an opportunity. We still have time to change course. I'm here today to call on you to fund 3 important items. FTE for 2 strands at Martin Luther King, budget for a focus option review, and for a proper boundary review next year. One way you can manage this is to leave access at RCP for this year. Moving access to 2 sites is estimated to cost at least $1 million annually above the current school budget. That's a 50% increase per student. That's money we don't have, and if we can find it, it would be better spent supporting historically underserved students. Every realistic combination currently proposed for siting access at 2 locations involves at least one of the following: increased disenfranchisement of African American and other HU students, decreased space and resources available to Da Vinci students, decreasing the funds available to PPS by drastically increasing the annual cost of access. Some people have asked, and probably are asking, how will not moving access allow us to spend funds on MLK's FTE, or a focus option review, or a boundary review? The answer is the superintendent has already committed to spending these funds to provide access students the same level of services or better. Keeping access together at one site is the only way to do this without spending more money. Keeping access at RCP is the least worst option. All other options involve at least one of the above conditions, or displacing neighborhood students who are not already slated to move next year. One-way access, no, so this is only one way, right? I'm sure there are other ways. If I can find a way, if our parents can find a way, there are other ways. There are ways that were proposed previously, and when we went down this road of citing the middle schools, and we didn't first decide how we were going to ensure that 300 students had a school, that was a mistake. And that's what we should have been focused on, is not where are we going to put access, but how are we going to keep our promise to our district parents to open these middle schools without harming any students' current services. Access can remain at RCP by moving VDLI to Harrison Park and distributing Roseway Heights cohort among Lee, Vestal, Scott, and between 80 and 180 Beverly Cleary students. This is how bad our data is. We're not even sure if it's 80 or 180. Those students could be distributed to Irvington next year. This creates right-sized schools. This plan helps several schools immediately and doesn't increase the cost to the district. I really do appreciate all the work that you all have done. I recognize that you're volunteers and you've put a lot of hours into this. Unfortunately, I'm going to ask you to put some more hours into it. because this plan is doable if you have the will and the desire to spend money to increase equity rather than to spend money just to cover a bad plan. I guess that's really all I have to say, except to thank MLK for having us here, and to remind everyone that we're all PPS parents, and really we need to focus on centering equity for the most underserved and not reducing services for any student that has needs. Thank you.
Our next speakers are Megan Kahn and Jessica Lottie.
Hello, my name is Megan Kahn, K-A-H-N. 10 years ago, I started my teaching career right here at Martin Luther King Jr. School. I'm proud to serve this community and honored to work in this incredibly diverse school, teaching these amazing children every day. MLK Jr. staff has repeatedly asked to meet with board members to discuss the needs of our school. We have not received any response from board members about these requests. I'm here tonight to ask you to support our school and to invite you again to come hear from our staff at another time when we can speak longer than 3 minutes. In my 10 years here, our school has never gotten a boundary growth, despite having the smallest boundary in the district and serving some of the most vulnerable children in the district who you say you prioritize. Our school is not under-enrolled because we can't attract families to come here. Even if we did capture 100% of the boundary area, we would still be under-enrolled. We are under-enrolled because of racism and pushback on boundary changes. When the Jefferson cluster boundary changes were pushed through a few years back, our school was threatened with closure. Closing the school hurts most of our vulnerable children and families. These threats have been made repeatedly in my 10 years here. What hasn't happened is a boundary growth. This board refuses a boundary growth for the school. This past fall, when you approved the opening of the 2 middle schools. Superintendent and board members, we need you to budget for a boundary review. We need you to grow our boundaries so we can give kids the robust, culturally responsive educational program they need and deserve. Time and again, PPS has shown that it will not prioritize the needs of the black and brown students at MLK Jr. It seems like you think our families won't make as much fuss as the white families of the other schools in this district. This has got to stop. It is not equity-focused or student-centered. Our kids need and deserve your support, not a school closure. For next year, our school is staffed for just one section of every grade, K through 5, in our neighborhood program. This does not serve equity. It perpetuates the harmful effects of institutionalized racism. It hurts our children, and they have plenty of hurts already. Adverse childhood experiences are real for my students. The majority of my students are struggling with impacts of trauma on a daily basis. They need and deserve our support to give them all the resources they can to overcome these struggles. This year, I'm the only second grade teacher for our neighborhood program. I have just 5 boys in my class. These boys are lonely and isolated because of your refusal to grow our boundaries. Kids cannot flourish with this much isolation. They cannot grow relationships with other kids if there are no other kids around. I have no teaching partner with whom to plan instruction. My students are only getting my ideas instead of benefiting from at least 2 teachers working together. I firmly believe that that is the best way to improve instruction is through intentional collaboration. My students deserve the same instructional support most other kids in the district receive when their teachers have grade level partners. So our students need and deserve to at least have 2 strands at every grade level at MLK Jr. They need and deserve to have a robust educational program that can only come with more FTE released now, not waiting for October enrollment counts. Martin Luther King Jr. School and community need and deserve a significant boundary growth, fund focus option review, and boundary review. I ask you all and everyone who can hear me to join in me and be allies for the amazing children and staff, families of this school. Create a budget that supports the needs of Martin Luther King Jr. School. Thank you.
My name is Jessica Lottie, L-A-H-T-I. Today I'm here to read a letter that was written by myself and 9 other members of the Grant and Lincoln cluster schools. Dear Superintendent Guerrero and PPS board members, we are writing to you to implore you to do the right thing at this moment in time. As parents within PPS system, we have witnessed PPS make decision after decision, benefiting those in our district who have the most at the expense of those who are already underserved and who have been systematically denied fair access to resources. We implore you to provide the funding and FTE to allow Martin Luther King Jr., Scott, and Vestal schools 2 neighborhood strands for each grade. We implore you to honor the commitment the board made to these schools in November of last year. Providing 2 strands is critical to student learning. It allows educators to balance classrooms based on individual and collective student needs, provides opportunities for educators to collaborate, and greatly reduces the likelihood of unmanageable class sizes of 28 students or more. Providing 2 strands will also help create a virtuous cycle, drawing families back to their neighborhood schools, thereby allowing those schools to continue to grow and thrive. PPS continues to fail our most vulnerable students, perpetuating and exacerbating inequity. PPS and the board are complicit in 1, continuing to delay much-needed boundary changes, allowing school boundaries to be more aligned with SES than they are with proximity to schools and classroom availability. 2, failing to hold staff accountable for providing accurate data, preventing informed decision-making. 3, allowing for school-based foundations, creating a pronounced divide in school funding. And 4, failing to adequately review focus options, allowing students and funding to be pulled away from neighborhood schools, thereby further segregating the school district. Superintendent and the board, this list barely scratches the surface of the inequity within PPS. Don't continue the pattern. Provide 2 strands, because equity. Additionally, and this is just me personally, I'd like to request that you reconsider eliminating the Resource Conservation Department. This team of 1 plus volunteers, as you heard earlier, saves the district a ton of money and obviously reduces our environmental impact. So thank you.
Next, we have Smith Lai and Brooke Berglund.
Hi there, my name is Smith Lai, L-A-I. I'm a Scott school parent with 2 children in the Spanish immersion program. My 3rd graders class is slated to be combined next year into a single immersion strand because of low school enrollment, and that's just part of a larger puzzle around single strands across the district, especially among neighborhood programs. I grappled with what to say tonight, whether to rehash the well-known issues around how detrimental to student learning it is to maintain these single strands, but I know you're well aware of the challenges faced by both students and teachers. It's been documented and discussed for years. I know you've seen the demographics for the schools primarily affected by this single strand issue. The majority of these schools, including Scott, Martin Luther King Jr., and Vestal, are Title I schools and populated by historically underserved students. Scott specifically created a co-located DLI program not merely as a fun add-on enrichment program for students already swimming in resources, but as a way to reach underserved emerging bilingual students. Members of our communities have attended so many board meetings and boundary enrollment and listening sessions, and I think I can speak for many of us that we feel let down by the district. I listened to night after night of stirring, compelling testimony, like those given tonight, during these meetings. We thought surely the district would make some tough but necessary decisions around boundary changes, but that did not happen. And now here we are with under-enrolled schools while our more resource-rich neighbors have sacrificed nothing. Part of me wonders what's left to say that hasn't been said before. The optics on this are rotten. The most vulnerable students in the districts get crapped upon time and time again. We feel pride in our schools and our students and in our communities, but it is frustrating and demoralizing to feel like the district truly doesn't make decisions from student-centered perspective. Sometimes it feels like you don't want us to succeed, which I recognize might sound inflammatory, but it's true. It feels relentless, these meetings, the letter writing, all of it. And I feel fortunate to have the time to be here tonight. It's a luxury a lot of parents don't have. We're going to keep showing up on behalf of our students who deserve more than they've been given. Our schools, folks that are here tonight from Martin Luther King Jr., Scott, and Vestal, those of us here, we need additional FTE to be successful at our schools. We're asking that you keep your promises to provide equitable education opportunities to all students in the district, promises to specifically do away with single-strand neighborhood programs. It's not enough to talk about equity. We expect action. Thank you.
Next, we have Steve Buell and Elizabeth Israel Davis.
My name's Steve Buell, B-U-E-L. I want to talk about the educational part of the budget, K through 8. But before that, we're going to really get rid of the Resource Conservation Department. Are you kidding? That one almost must be a joke. Also, you guys promised 2 strands to these. You promised. I was in November. Now you're going to go back on it? I mean, you said you'll do it. Well, you need to follow through and do it. I'm sorry. That's the way I look at the world, but maybe you don't. There's 5 things that I think should have been in this budget that aren't. They all have to do with children. Sometimes that's why they don't get there. First, we're just not going to teach those older immigrant children English. We're just let them go and keep tossing them in those classrooms like biology and physics without them having the English background to be able to do anything and actually be successful in our schools. I guess we are. I don't see it in there. I don't think it's a good idea. One thing that hasn't been mentioned, even by me, is we're struggling with the writing in our schools. All schools across the country are struggling with the writing, and I haven't heard anybody really talk about it. I hope the superintendent eventually will put together some real emphasis on getting kids to write. Because teachers, when you're doing things like the Common Core, teachers don't really take the time and energy often to do the writing. You have to correct it. You have to work with it. We need to actually have that coming, push on that coming from the top. Back in 1981, I did the same thing. Said, hey, we need to do writing. They started to do it. Things got better. We're struggling there. We're cutting back our libraries. People from full-time to half-time, I think it's a big mistake. Libraries are critical to our schools, and it's just, we've been moving on, getting them better, more solid. They're still not even anywhere near probably where they should be, but to cut them back, several librarians to half-time from full-time is really a big mistake. Our reading still is not directed enough at children who can't read, period. We're still talking reading, testing, and so forth, but we really need to get in there with reading teachers. That's who teaches people, teachers, and get reading teachers into those schools and teach those kids who can't read at all, hardly at all, to read. Now, I'm talking mostly about English-speaking children there, because the other children who don't speak English, they take a little longer, but all those children who speak English out of their home should be able to be reading. And the other thing that we're messing up in this budget, again, is the middle schools. It's back to the same thing. We're not really laying out things that engage children, and we're going to go to 6-period day. We're still going to do that? Gee, Manny, come on. You're going to build and spend millions, and then we're going to go to a 6-period day, which eliminates huge amounts of why we went to the middle schools in the first place. So I don't know. Those things are bothersome to me, but you can live with them or out them, I guess. One of the big topics, overall things that I think we're going down the wrong road to some degree, possibly, and that's in our educational budget. The superintendent, who's a good, solid educator, talks about performance metrics, key performance indicators, data-driven, evidence-based, and on and on. But in actuality, these aren't your educational program. These are tools for teachers to use in your program. And our program is such a mess that we don't even know where things are. We don't really have a plan. And before we get teachers these tools and focusing on the tools, we may want to straighten out the plan of how we're planning to educate children. Teachers teach children. And so we need to have a program-based. We moved a little in this direction, but nowhere near where we should. We need to have a program-based way to staff the schools. So every school, regardless of where they are, regardless if they're George Middle School or MLK or Ainsworth, they have equal programs. And then once we get to that point, then you're building how you actually are educating your children. And then that allows you to put on top of that the special programs which meets the equity based on the fact that you can actually spell out why you get a reading teacher, why you get a tag program. And it's fair across the district. And we wouldn't have these schools that are these outlying schools that are a lot worse off or a lot better off than other schools. And it's just, we need to move in those directions, and I haven't heard much about that yet. There's did a little jump, but not anywhere near what we need to. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Israel Davis, ISRAEL-Davis. And in the board discussion prior to this, I heard Dr. Valentino mention the intention to direct more funds toward teacher training, specifically in the area of literacy. Yes, please. Right now, all over the district, teachers have students with Tier 3 instructional needs in reading in their classes. These teachers are asking, and in some cases begging, for training in Project Read in order to be able to meet those needs. The response that many are receiving is either silence or denial due to lack of resource. Some are being denied because their school isn't in the right stage of EBBL, but in the meantime, they're being offered no alternative as a Tier 3 intervention. Teachers are willing. Some are even desperate. We don't like to not be able to teach our students. Right now, officially, Project Read is our adoption for Tier 2 and 3 reading intervention, and not everybody has access to it. We need to change that. So that is my highly specific budget request, is more training for classroom teachers in Project Read. I've had a look at LLI. Spent about an hour with just the orange box. I'd like to see the green box. It's not going to cut it for our most highly impacted kids, in my opinion, as an aside. But that's all. Thank you.
Our next speakers are Erica Bridgman and Kelly Oding.
Erica Bridgman, Bridgeman, and I'm standing here as a parent of a 6th grader and a 2nd grader at Boise Elliott Humboldt. But before I get started, I want to also say that in addition to being a parent, I also have an undergraduate degree that was focused specifically on multicultural education, and a graduate degree that's in public health with a focus on maternal and child health. And I have spent a lot of this year watching the district look at what to do with access, and I want to say support access because, of course, children who have special learning needs need an environment in which they can learn, obviously. But I have seen us go from one vulnerable population after another. Maybe we should displace the Native Americans. Maybe we should displace people at Kairos. Maybe we should displace people with special needs. And what is happening is that at the meantime, I also see parents coming up with all kinds of amazing solutions that could work that are not being heard by the district, including keeping access where it is for now, but I've seen many options and many schools, and our voices are not being listened to. Now I want to go back to Boise. Several years ago, I was a Humboldt parent, and I was also a graduate school student, and I had a child who was very young. She could barely walk at that point, and a kindergartner at Humboldt. I was walking my kindergartner to Humboldt, and the news cameras of Fox News were there. That was how I, as a parent, when I saw those news reporters, found out that my kindergartner school was going to close. From that point, as Humboldt parents, we organized and we tried to stop and we lost. And it worked out okay because actually I love being at Boise, but it didn't work out okay because of any support from the district. It worked out because we as a community worked together to figure out how to be a community together. And at that time, the district said this is the last merger. We are already the Boise, Elliott, and Humboldt neighborhood. We are 3 neighborhoods and 1. Our building is overflowing. We do not have a separate auditorium and gym and lunchroom. If you house another program in our room, that means our children will not be able to have access to physical education and meet their requirements because there's no space where the access people can eat and we can hold our assemblies. And that one room is used to support community events. Boise is basically open from 8 o'clock in the morning until almost 7 o'clock at night, most days, because we are so involved with community things to support our families there. So I refuse to say that in defending our school, though, that I stand against King or Da Vinci or any of the others, because I think that 2 strands need to happen. But I want you to understand that you continue to put communities, vulnerable communities, pitting us against each other instead of looking in neighborhoods that have more privilege that could house this program. And it's not right to say, okay, it's going to be Boise, the only African-American, predominantly African-American school left in the entire state, and we have almost no notice. We need to stop making decisions about African-American communities without us. Like, none of you are here to represent my community, and all of you are making decisions about it. So that needs to stop. What you need to do is to listen to the many solutions, consider keeping us at Rose City Park, and try to figure out how to make this work. You can't decide to put something at a school 18 days before the school year closes, and then we don't have any time to organize and get our voices out there. Finally, on the public health perspective, I want to say, maybe it's not that big of a deal. We could think, okay, our kids don't have as much physical education or whatever. We have a lot of traumatized kids. We have a lot of kids who have been through a lot. This experience of structural violence and racism, my son, who's now 12, if he's at Southeast, and we were in Southeast and he got a toy, little plastic gun this big, couldn't resemble anything, at a birthday party. And he's like, oh my God, Mama, I have a little plastic gun. Someone could shoot me. We're in Southeast. He's terrified all the time as a young black boy, but he is not terrified in Boise. That is what that means. That is a place where our kids feel safe, where we can braid our hair and dance our dances and study about Malcolm X and Che Guevara and all of that. And our teachers love our children, and that is our only safe place and the only place like it in Oregon. So please reconsider and stop making decisions about us without us.
Hi, my name is Kelly Edding, O-E-T-T-I-N-G, and I give this statement in support of Grout parents of 3rd graders in their efforts to make a plea for smaller class sizes for our students at Grout Elementary in Southeast Portland. I speak on behalf of my son's 3rd grade teacher, Miss Van Clock, who was unable to make it tonight. And she says, our students are the ones that are most vulnerable and at risk for academic success. Our classes are too big and our students too valuable to continue with such large class sizes. We are way over the recently negotiated class size threshold. Our principal has to spread resources as best she sees fit, but what really needs to happen for us to close the achievement gap is for our class sizes to be small enough to help support each student wherever they are at. Large class sizes combined with Title I students does not create equity in our schools. Please consider giving additional FTE specifically to address class size in our buildings. Ms. Van Clock currently has 34 students in her 3rd grade class. 18 of them are below the poverty line. There are 10 cultures and countries represented: Russian, Cantonese, South African, Mexican, Afghani, Cambodian, Karen, Nigerian, Tanzanian, and Native American. 7 are English language learning students. We also have 4 major religions represented: students in special education, students with active child services involvement in their families, and identified talented and gifted students. And even more than that, there are students who are living daily in trauma. Every single student with a unique background in history wants to learn. They demand to learn as only any 8-year-old child can, and they deserve her attention and her ability to teach them. Ms. Van Clock had to make the choice of giving her students space to learn or individual desks. She got rid of all the desks, hers too, just so she could have enough room to learn. Not because it's the trend or because it creates better community, because it does do those things, no doubt, but she did it just to move around, just to be able to move around each other in the classroom. And now she stands next to a file cabinet to make phone calls to parents. Grout's third graders have already spent 1 year in an overcrowded classroom with teachers who were stretched too thin. Unless a third teacher is added to the fourth grade, they will continue to remain behind their peers. 34 students, 34 humans in one class is too many. Our students deserve better. Thank you.
Next, we have Heidi Hill and Paige Thomas.
No. There it is. Thank you. Sorry. Hello, my name is Heidi Hill, H-I-L-L. I am the mother of a current Grout third grader. I'm with Kelly, Grout third grade. We have been at Grout since kindergarten. We need an additional fourth grade teacher for the next school year. The current PPS budget allows for only 2 fourth grade teachers currently. I am specifically calling to replace the third grade teacher that was lost for this current year and not replaced. Without that third teacher, our current third grade classes are way over your recently negotiated class size threshold. Grout's third graders have now spent 1 year in an overcrowded classroom with teachers who are stretched too thin. As our teacher stated, she got rid of all the desks because there is not enough room for all of these bodies in this classroom. 4 of the students in our class have to sit on the floor as their assigned seats. We are also experiencing more behavior issues this year than any other year, which is disruptive to the learning process for all of our students. I asked my son I'll skip that part. I asked my son his thoughts on having a large class today, and he said, we have a lot of chaos this year, and we can possibly get more kids next year, so we would get more chaos, and more chaos means not having the teacher be able to teach, and not being able to teach means not learning enough, and that may cause failing the grade, which would be horrible. Yes, that was all one sentence. This was our first year for standardized testing. Grout third graders are testing below the PPS average testing achievements in English, reading, writing, and math. Unless a third grade teacher is added in the fourth grade, they will continue to remain behind their peers, which of course we do not want. The PPS mission states, every student, by name, prepared for college, career, and participation as an active community member, regardless of race, income, or zip code. As the statement from our teacher listed, we have many underserved students in this particular class at Grout. We have 10 different cultures, just in the third grade. 17% of our class are ESL, and 54% of our particular third grade class is living below the poverty line. We love Grout and want to see this school and all of its children succeed, which is why we are here tonight. I support our teacher as much as I possibly can, but only she can teach these students. I am one of the privileged parents that are able and willing to help our teachers with tasks and janitorial maintenance on a volunteer basis because I care. Not all parents can. Not all parents even know about this meeting tonight, let alone the PPS processes into helping getting the resources and teachers we need. I am representing all of Grout's current third grade students to ask you for your help in maintaining the PPS mission and get them back on track to succeed and get them prepared for college regardless of race or income. We have to work together on this. We've taken the hit this year and have seen what happens when class sizes are too big. We have also sent you individually letters with the statistics given to us by Principal Annie. Now it's your turn to honor your mission. They really need that third teacher back in their lives next year. Please budget us one. Thank you.
Next we have Ray Lister. and Pat Christensen.
Good evening. Is this on? Good evening. My name is Ray Lister. I'm a business representative. It's Lister, and I'm a business representative for the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. And I represent some of the maintenance and videography workers that you have here at the district. I'm here basically to ask you to be careful. I'm concerned because I know that 61 positions were eliminated at the central office. And of those 61 positions, I think around 40 of them were actual people whose jobs were eliminated, and they're not going to be working with the district as of June 30th. One of those people is my friend, my brother, Dan. Dan Green's been working for the school district for 25 years. And he brings video like this to the community. I'm going to borrow a line from Washington Post, "Democracy dies in darkness." We don't want to see things like this go silent. And you may not know, Dan is 50% of the workers that you have for all the schools in this district. That worries me, the idea that several of the positions that you were looking to hire for in the electrical department were eliminated. Yes, they were empty, and so those weren't real people that were affected just then, but the schools are going to be impacted the same way. If you think you can hire contractors to do better work for less in this market, I'm sorry, I got a bridge that I can sell you in Arizona, of all places. Anyway, I'm just asking, I know what you're doing is hard. You're volunteers, I get it. What you're doing is very difficult, and you've been faced. I wish that I was talking to the people who put this pile in your lap. You know, it's difficult. But please be careful, because what you do today is going to affect every single one of these people for the rest of their lives. And the kids deserve better. Thanks.
Evening, everyone. Pat Christensen, Christensen. I don't want to get too far off in the weeds, but I kind of have an obligation. I, too, am a volunteer. I'm the president of the District Council of Unions, and I represent the maintenance workers who take care of your facilities. These facilities that we're currently trying to replace because they weren't fully funded for decades, the district has, in the past, promised that if you got your bond, which they got, almost $800 million, that they would take care of these facilities, not only the old ones that you're in now, but the new ones that you're getting. Unfortunately, as we speak, there's $1.2 million being pulled out of the maintenance budget. We're not asking for more maintenance, we're asking that you don't take from what you have. Because the people that are serving you now, which is less than 100 people for nearly 100 buildings, can't stay in front of all the issues. It's on their back, the fact that the buildings are still open after being 70 years old on average. So I'm asking the board to fulfill their obligations that they made in the past to support taking care of the facilities that you have. And to get off in the weeds like I started, there was a slide up here a few minutes ago, well actually half hour plus ago, showing that there was issues in the budget that could be, I can't even remember the term that was used now, but that were harmful or potential harmful, excuse me, to next year's budget. One of them was listed was health and welfare increases. I'm standing before you today as a 6-year trustee on the Health and Welfare Board for the school district health and welfare. 5 of those years have been flat. There's been no increases to the district budget, and we don't foresee any increases going forward. So I'm not sure why there's a scare tactic of $1 million, $4 million to $9 million being put on the board when we don't see any increases coming your way, because it's been one of the few things that's well managed on your behalf with your money. The only place I can see that there could potentially be an increase in the health and welfare, and I'm very much available to be educated if I'm misspeaking to anyone who's on the front of the room here, is the unrepresenteds, the people who do not belong to unions, do not belong to your health and welfare trust, which is being jointly managed. They are in the OWEB, which is a whole different plan, which is and has and will continue to cost you more money for less benefits. It's unfortunate that the district historically not necessarily this group in front of you, well, maybe one or two of them, chose to split them off and pull them out of this well-funded, very good health insurance plan that your employees currently enjoy. I'd also like to point out that aside from the superintendent, everyone up here is a volunteer, and I thank you. I know you have real challenges in front of you, and I'm really been torn about coming to the microphone because here we are once again with heartfelt testimony, what's touching your lives at home and in your communities and your neighborhoods in the future, and I feel that, and I want to support all of your efforts. With that said, my responsibility is to the people that I represent, which are being cut. And here's an example that really concerns me. At the May 1st meeting of this budget hearing, I came to the meeting and I testified and I asked for the board to look back at the promises they've made and uphold to the promises that they've made. I've had absolutely zero feedback from any of the people in the front of this room since that meeting. But what I have gotten is feedback from my members. My members are telling me they're getting layoff notices. One of the gentlemen's right over here. So what management's currently doing is they're imposing the proposed budget, not the approved budget, not the one that your elected officials are in charge of, not the budget you'll know about at the end of June, but the proposed. At that meeting on the 1st, I gave a lengthy message about continuing to engage the process. And now I feel like I need to apologize to you because it appears there is no process. They're letting us vent before they do what the superintendent wanted to do. And it's really hard for me to deliver that message because I believe in process. I'm a 35-year union member, and I represent for what's best for large groups, not what's good for me, but what's good for the body. This is disruptive to the future, and I'm really hoping that they'll engage the many assets that are in front of you. To this point, you're totally silent, and you're missing lots of opportunities, and it's unfortunate that I have to be here tonight to continue, and I will continue with larger groups of support in the future if we don't get to see some change, because your future, your kids, your families, your tax dollars is what's being managed right here, and it looks like there is no process.
Our last two speakers on the list are Alex Montforth and Gabrielle Riley.
Good evening. So, Jesus, I'm really loud sometimes. So I'm Alex Montfort. I teach here at King, going on 10 years. I have lived through the initial DBRAC absurdity, participated, spoke at a number of the Jeff Cluster meetings, only to see no changes in the boundaries. Our boundary is the smallest boundary in the district. Still no changes. There's numerous people that have come up here and spoken about the single strands. We've been disenfranchised. I shouldn't say we. Our black and brown students and their families have been disenfranchised for years. For years. And it's been enabled by white flight, where families can just sign away to get their kids taken to another school, a not black and brown school. And it's ridiculous. When Shamika asked, why do you lead? I lead because there's a need. And the need is in our families and our students that have been so disenfranchised and constantly pushed to the cusp of, we're going to close you, we're not. We're going to do this. No, we're going to shove access in here. Like, this whole access process has been unfair to the access families. It first started out with you trying to, like, pit them against the pioneer families, which is completely unfair to both parties. Now, in your next installments, you're talking about shoving them into high minority, high need schools, specifically that I'm referring to are Boise and us. So, yet again, you're pitting the access families against the needy populations. And that's ridiculous. And it's not fair to them, and it's not fair to our families. If you want a solution to this, find them a school. I have a son who just went through Ockley's inaugural year. That whole program got shoved through in a really quick way with limited planning, with limited vision, and it was a fiasco. Like, if any of you paid any attention, Ockley's first year was ludicrous. You're opening up Tubman. Thank God you have Butler, who's actually been on the team for close to 2 years now. And then you're also doing the other middle school. Like, just do one thing right. Do one thing well, and then roll it out. But don't shove access into our schools and disenfranchise our students and our families. Roll out Tubman, but do it right. And then learn from the mistakes at Ockley, learn with your growing pains at Tubman, and then roll out the third middle school. You have a school. They have a school. Access has a school. And this whole thing, I mean, if it's not us, if it's not Boise, it's Applegate, it's Rice. I mean, have a freaking plan. It's not just throwing stuff against the wall and seeing what sticks, seeing who's going to like fight back the least, which gets me back to the DBRAC problem, because the whole reason that our boundary stays the way it is because you're afraid to upset the taxpayers because of their property values. Is that a reason to make educational decisions? And you have taken over as the head of equity. This whole process is inequitable, which means you all need to find someone who can recognize inequality and put them in freaking charge of it, because this is not an equitable situation.
Everyone, I'm Gabrielle Riley, R-I-L-E-Y for the record. First, I want to say thanks for you guys listening to me. I realize you guys have a really hard job, and sitting back listening to all the testimony here, I feel a little selfish coming here on behalf of my board, but here I am nonetheless. I'm Gabby Riley. I work at ZGF Architects. I've been involved with the Portland Workforce Alliance for the past like four years. And I'm here because I got involved with volunteering for some of the career days that we do at our office. And those career days really helped spearhead me into starting to volunteer for the Portland Workforce Alliance. And I've been serving on as the board secretary for the past 3 years, going on 4. So with that, I'll read just a statement that we have here prepared. It won't take much more of your time. On behalf of our board leadership, I'd like to share this brief statement of support in favor of career education and CTE in Portland Public Schools. We don't need to tell you the value of CTE classes or their impact on graduation rates or on the outcomes for minority and low-income students. PWA has worked in partnership with the school district for about 13 years to provide career learning experiences to thousands of students each year. We've seen firsthand the value of these experiences and connections provide to both the students and the employers that welcome those students into their businesses. We have also seen the impact of PPS choosing to invest in career coordinators, CTE classes, and central support. We recognize that there are hard choices to be made during the budgeting process. This is why we ask that you continue to support this valuable effort in PPS. It has taken us years to build up these amazing offerings for the young people in Portland Public Schools, and we want to continue to help this effort grow and thrive for generations to come. And also thank you for the increase that you all gave us last year. So we hope that you continue to do so.
I have one more speaker.
Okay.
Anna Garwood.
Hello, my name is Anna Garwood, G-A-R-W-O-O-D, and I'm the program director of the youth programs at Growing Gardens. I'm here just to raise visibility about school gardens in our district and advocate for their continued support. We have 78% of schools in PPS actually have school gardens. At the higher income schools, those are usually PTA supported. At other schools, there's a mix of nonprofits, the SUN programs, passionate volunteers that pull it off. Teachers use the gardens as outdoor learning spaces for science, especially tied to the next generation science standards, for math, for environmental literacy, for other subjects as well, and teachers report back to us that the really hands-on learning really enhances the students' learning. We put together a proposal with the other school garden organizations in the area to continue to support school garden education at Title I schools. And I hope you consider this proposal, and thank you for coming out to see some of the school gardens, and I welcome any of the rest of you to do so as well. Thanks.
So that's it. So I'd like to thank everybody for coming this evening. As I said at the beginning of the meeting, or the listening session, that prior to this board meeting, we had a discussion about those budget items that potentially are going to get modified before the board has its final approval. Some of the items that were mentioned tonight are those that were also raised by board members and by the superintendent and staff as potential adjustments. So at our meeting on Tuesday the 22nd, I expect we'll continue that discussion and potentially have some staff modifications or proposals for the board to consider. So I want to thank everybody for coming tonight and ask board members if there's anything that anybody wants to add. Superintendent Guerrero? No. Well, I want to thank everybody for, on a beautiful evening, coming out and sharing your perspectives and concerns with us. Thank you.